What is up, guys? Roster Shuffle Part 2 has officially taken place. And of course, like I said, after post-MLG Vegas, and I guess you could say kind of like New Year's, roster moves are beginning to kind of take place once again. Not that anything is halted, but it's just kind of continued. I'm going to be bringing you guys the second update. So I believe the last thing that we talked about as far as the time scheme was considered was the United transfer of the players from the Gosu Crew. So that's kind of like a little bit of a timeline as to where we are right now. If you guys are curious, you want to check out the last video that I did. If you kind of missed out on the early roster moves that ended up taking place, I will put a link in the description as well as a link on screen somewhere to where you guys can go and check that out and kind of get a little bit of an idea as to where we are at and kind of the roster changes kind of coming into this, because I'm not going to go back and explain them for too long. So yeah. So I'm going to first off say Happy New Year's to all of you guys. Happy 2017. It's going to be a fantastic year. Definitely very, very, very motivated to not just be on the casting and to be doing research on teams and whatnot, but also to be making YouTube content to stay consistent and stuff like that. So thank you guys for all the support. Obviously, in 2017 should be a fantastic year. If you guys want to, feel free to post your New Year's resolutions down in the comments if you'd like. I'll definitely take a look. Or tweet me at LandoCod. Nice little addition there. I like it. All right, so first off, one of the first roster moves that we ended up seeing taking place was actually an announcement coming in from Nelson. Previous player, Black and Black Ops 3, 4 teams, 100 Thieves, Panda Gaming. Even earlier than that, was on rosters known as Most Wanted. Very known player throughout the community and a very talented player at that. Ended up announcing that he is going to be leaving Trigger Happy, which is not a surprise whatsoever, because two of his prior teammates, both Proofy and Spacely, the veterans of this roster, along with Twiz, but those two specific, announced that they were already making a change. We're going to leave Trigger Happy. Proofy already said that he is an organization. Spacely said that he is leaving, looking for a team, and Nelson has just announced not too long ago that he is going to be leaving this roster and is currently a free agent as well. Have yet to hear anything from Twiz, but it's most likely to be expected he's either leaving the team or he's going to find 3 other teammates. So we'll see how obviously that does take place. And after a very subpar placing, I think like a top 25 through 28 placing at MLG Vegas, it was not a surprise to me whatsoever that we end up seeing Trigger Happy, split apart. Next roster change to be looking at is of Killa. Killa officially announces that he is going to be a free agent, of course, leaving the previous Team Revenge roster, which consisted of Killa, Miracles, Mox, and Wheats. At their top 20 placing at MLG Vegas, it obviously not a surprise to see them make a change either, with already, I believe, Miracles saying that he was a free agent, which later happens actually, so spoiler, not going to talk about that. Miracles announcing that he's left the team, Killa announcing earlier that he was already leaving the team, which is exactly what we're talking about, and right now Mox and Wheats are actually teaming, or not teaming officially, but they are in scrimming with Spacely, of course, leaving Trigger Happy, and I believe as well with Priesta, who was previously on Panda Gaming. So that's kind of interesting to see. Of course, I don't believe that official roster change has been announced for the Panda Gaming lineup, at least in Priesta's end. At least I haven't seen it. So that should be an interesting roster to see how that kind of forms. It's actually a really, really good team. If things start to come more into fruition, I'll talk about that in a specific video. However, it seems that everyone from Team Revenge is kind of split apart, and much like Trigger Happy, TR is kind of looking for 4. So we'll see how that obviously goes. Just breezing through these really quickly. 3-Zep ended up announcing that Lawless will be a free agent as well, as officially left that particular team, which to me isn't a massive surprise. I believe the roster currently consists of Apox, Khalifa, and Baker. I believe, and I think Apox ended up tweeting out last night that they are still looking for one. So with that in mind, who do they look to obviously pick up as a 4th? It's a decent team. It's to be expected. I mean, it's an AM team. It's not someone who I'm really looking forward to see a top player go to. But if they can find a good 4th, this roster could be fairly decent as well. So kind of interesting to see how that roster does start to form, as they're still looking for one, as we know. Next team we have to talk about is going to be the Gosu Crew. For those who don't know, Gosu Crew having a fantastic performance heading into MLG Vegas, but they don't really have the placing that they would have liked to. Very, very talented roster. 3 of them end up going over to United alongside of Silly, while Drama was left to kind of fend for himself and to find 3 other teammates. So it seems that they found those 3 other teammates actually coming from DT. And the roster actually consists now of Drama, Godlike, Fox, and Lyric. I believe the previous teammate who they left, I think, was Ninjas from DT. So kind of interesting to see how these players kind of come over. We've seen these guys a few times. I think on relegation rosters and amateur teams and whatnot. So while this is definitely a downgrade from the previous Gosu Crew, we'll obviously see how they perform. It's hard to kind of bring up because to me, Gosu Crew went from being a top amateur team, which it was expected that those main component of guys would be picked up sooner or later. But it seems that Gosu Crew obviously has to realize, you know what, things are starting to come up, events are starting to come up, we have to have a roster to practice, and that's what they're going to do. So with that in mind, it looks like Gosu Crew has officially found 3 players to complete their new team moving forward for 2017. Next team we have, actually a new organization has entered the Call of Duty space, as we actually have a few ones to talk about, is going to be Vault GG. So Vault GG officially enters into the Call of Duty realm, as it were. I believe they're known for having a CSGO team. I'm not super familiar with them whatsoever, just to be completely honest with you. I do know they have CSGO rosters. I think they might even have a HOTS team or a Heroes of the Storm team. But besides that, some of the guys they picked up are definitely kind of surprising. These are names that I remember hearing back in the day, especially Snowhair back in Modern Warfare 2. So the official roster is Snowhair, Klo, Kalani, and Blazin. Like I said, a lot of you guys aren't going to know who they are, not going to be honest, until I looked at their CoD eSports wiki page. I did not even remember who they were. So kind of interested to see that they picked up those groups of players, and these guys aren't really well known whatsoever. I think one of the only guys you guys are going to maybe be familiar with is Snowhair, which I think competed back in the days of MW3. I remember Klo and Kalani. Like, I've heard those names before, and I never heard of Blazin personally, but I remember the names of Klo and Kalani. I think they've been playing like MW2, Black Ops 1, maybe even a little bit earlier than that, but these guys haven't really been playing for that long, at least as far as we know. I know that they ended up competing at MLG Vegas, ended up having, I think, like a top 25 placing. I think they were under the name of Fate, if I remember correctly. If that's wrong, I will put a link on the screen somewhere, but I believe they played under the name of Fate, having a top 25 placing at MLG Vegas. So of course, this team used to being together. These guys have played for a very long time, as it seems. I'm not sure if they've been, just competing under the radar for a very long time, if they are, a newer roster kind of coming back into the scene. So we'll obviously see how that does come, and obviously welcome to the side of Vault for entering into the Call of Duty space. It's good to see. Next team we have to talk about who's actually entering into the Call of Duty scene is the Red Reserve. For those who aren't familiar, this is kind of in some ways an off-brand or a little bit of an element, former element of the FaZe Clan team. Back in, I think, 2014 is when they announced the Red Reserve, kind of like a little bit of a branch off type of thing for a number of different reasons. And it seems that, to be honest, this is a very interesting, addition to the Call of Duty esports scene. I would have never imagined that Red Reserve was looking for a Call of Duty esports roster, but it seems that I think they are under a new type of ownership. I think it has to do with along the line sites of Orbit. So I'm not sure with all that. I'm not sure who exactly owns Orbit, but if they are an other esports organization that already has a Call of Duty team who might be in the CWL, I know that's kind of long, but essentially you just have to kind of keep in mind the ownership cannot have more than one team in the CWL per region. And of course, when it comes down to the global LAN that's going to be coming up, only one major league. If Orbit, for example, has let's just say they have a European team, right? Which they do. Then there's that conflict with the fact that that Red Reserve, who's also owned by Orbit now, is in the NA, which I don't know how that's going to work exactly. I'm sure that there are reasons and steps for both things. With the roster they picked up, this is definitely a team who could have a little bit of success. So the roster they ended up picking up was both Parasite and Swarly, who ended up coming from Complexity along with Llama God, and Pac-Man, who ended up getting released over from United. So that basically kind of sets it up. You might be thinking, well, where's the last player coming from Complexity? That was Exotic. He announced free agency basically right after the event, ended up going down. Of course, wanted to find a new home. Pac-Man ended up getting dropped alongside a few of his teammates, both Accuracy and Legal for the Gosu Crew. So, of course, these guys kind of coming from different teams start to combine together, which, this team's okay. It's not at all my favorite team, but, I mean, these guys, like I said, it's hard to predict, right? It's hard to say, oh, this team's going to succeed, this team isn't going to be good. We don't really know exactly, which I hate to say. I absolutely despise saying that. But this team on paper is okay. I'm not a huge fan of Parasite and Swirly being on the same team, just the mentality, but they do have a lot of leadership on this roster. I mean, you have Pac-Man, who's been playing since the very, very early days, Parasite, who's obviously a world champion in his own regard, you have Swirly, very, very well-known objective player, Llama God coming from AW, both these guys, both Swirly and Llama God, kind of making a name throughout AW into Black Ops 3, both of them being on C9 for a time as well. So, we'll see how they perform. I'm not 100% sure how they're going to do necessarily, because I just don't know how the slaying power is going to do. I think one player that you are going to have to absolutely see step up is going to be a player maybe of Pac-Man's regard, because Parasite can play well, but he's not always going to drop the highest numbers. That's going to be Llama God. Swirly's known for objective, and when you're facing off against the phases of the world, the Rise Nations of the world, the Optic Gamings of the world, even some really top European teams, they are going to absolutely destroy you if you don't have at least 3 guys playing very, very consistently throughout an entire series. That's just how Call of Duty is now. You have to have at least 3 guys who are going to drop, around the 1, if not higher than a 1 KD in an event. That's just kind of how it is, unless you're, a different type of roster. So next roster move we have to talk about, it's going to be EZG. For those who don't know about EZG, this was a team back in Black Ops 3. This isn't the exact team. This organization was actually in Season 1 of the, basically, tournament to enter into the Stage 1 of the Call of Duty World League. Basically the qualifiers, the online qualifiers is what it was called. And actually, technically it was Question Mark at the time, who later turned into TSM down the line. These two teams are competing for a spot. It was a best of 5. Winner of this particular series enters into the CWL Season 1. You're guaranteed to be in the CWL Season 1. And this particular organization goes up 2-0 versus Question Mark, who returns to TSM. This is like Proofy. Everyone kind of knows that team. Colchan, whatever. I think it was like Wheats and Pac-Man, right? They go down 0-2 to EZG. They end up getting reverse sweeped. So that meant that Question Mark, who later turned into TSM, gets into the league by making a reverse sweep over this organization, who could have been in Stage 1 of the Call of Duty World League. Could they have been bought out? Absolutely. That's not important, though, because they were so close. And some of these guys were actually on this team. Paranoia was one of those guys who was on this team, along with like Apox and whatnot. Apox was actually on one of the previous teams. He's now on 3-sub. Either way, though. So there has been a number of different things that have kind of came up to me about this roster over Black Ops 3, casted over them in many semi-pro leagues, casted over Casmo back when he was on the EZG youth team, casted over Paranoia when he was on the regular EZG squad. It would come down, he's actually a substitute for the EZG youth team. He would even come and play on the roster a little bit, and he'd always drop numbers. So to me, it's kind of interesting, because to me, it's like an EZG reunion, because Casmo, kind of known player on the youth team, meets Paranoia, who's already been kind of an established top amateur player for the regular EZG squad. They're very confident when it comes down to this particular organization. So it's good to see those two kind of form back. But Casmo did recently leave the EZG team to go over onto Sigma for the MLG Vegas tournament, as for those who don't obviously know, where they end up getting a top 24 placing. Not at all what they probably would have wanted. And two of his teammates alongside himself, both Godforms and Bounds, have joined alongside this team. So now the roster consists of Casmo, Paranoia, Godforms, and Bounds. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure how this roster is going to do. I know what Casmo can do. I know what Paranoia can do, but I'm not super familiar with Godforms or Bounds, and wasn't able to cast over them since they didn't make it through the open bracket. So with that in mind, should be an interesting roster. Should be interesting to see how they end up performing. So major props to them. Really, really excited to see Casmo and Paranoia officially on a regular team now. So I might make a separate video about this particular thing, because Mindfreak ended up making a roster change after 2 years. And Denz, a very, very motivated player for the side of Mindfreak, ends up leaving this particular team, which is huge. And he goes up and joins over on Orbit, in which case Swiftazor, who was one of the major stars for the previous Orbit team, ends up getting released. Now, this is crazy, and I'm thinking about doing a particular series alongside of Europe and the APAC region, and might make that a particular series on my channel that I do, because I know there's a lot of people who really enjoy that, are trying to get into it, and I've recently been doing a lot of research, probably more research on the EU and APAC regions over the last few years than I have been on NA for like the last week or so, just trying to learn about the scene, trying to get a little bit more of a overall idea of what to expect for certain rosters, certain players that are kind of coming up over the years and whatnot. So if you guys are curious, I don't know if you made it to this part of the video, let me know down in the comments. Would you guys enjoy seeing a particular series or a particular, focus of videos talking about those particular changes? Because I've kind of strayed away from the past just because I wasn't an expert. I felt like when it came down to those particular topics, and I couldn't talk about them with, an absolute certainty as to what I thought was true or not. So if you guys are curious, want to see that, I absolutely will. But much like I've been kind of brisking over those previous roster changes, much like I will do now, this is crazy though. This is absolutely absurd for the ANZ and the ANZ community. And now it's time for our last roster move. Essentially, Chino decides that he is, in some ways, kind of branching off from the Renegade side. So basically what's going to happen is that he has moved to the inactive roster for the side of Renegades, and is basically accepting offers from other teams. So for those who know about Renegades, the Detroit Renegades as they're called now, this is a professional organization. Have a number of different esports teams in high up places. You have teams in the highest regard when it comes down to esports titles, and they do things right. And what I mean by that is that contracts are in place. They're putting him on their inactive roster, meaning they're not dropping him. He's not a free agent. However, he is accepting offers to those who will send those toward his way. So most likely there is a buyout potentially for his contract. Now, do I know how much that is? No. Am I interested in knowing what that is? Probably, but I'm not going to, obviously decide to put that information out if I was able to learn of it, but I don't know. So this is interesting, right? And I'm going to talk about this probably more than I will about the other roster changes. And this is interesting to me because after a very long time of Chino coming onto the roster with Cinder and Diabolic. I mean, he's been on this team for a very long time, right? The DT ended up forming toward the beginning of Black Ops 3 for obvious reasons, for those who don't know. And he was on the Rise Nation organization throughout the entirety of AW. I mean, I think he was on that team for that entire year, that entire title. He was on that team, and he ends up leaving after obviously having some last-second teammates from MSG World Finals, not placing well. Joins over with his friends, right? Joins over with his friends over on DT, joining alongside of Cinder and Diabolic. Primarily, of course, there were different teammates who would come in, at different times, whether it was Ivy, whether it was Killa, whether it was Happy. And these guys really, they grinded. I gotta be honest. I mean, these guys were grinding heading into LG Vegas. They have a top 28 placing. Like I said, it's hard to say that this roster doesn't deserve success. Because I think, honestly, with the grinding that they did heading into this event, they deserve success. And this is the thing where you have to step back and say, the slang isn't there. I mean, the slang, it's not there, right? I mean, you have a number of different guys who can have big performances, right? Throughout AW, Chino, if he wasn't having a good performance, then it kind of ruined the team's mojo. If Diabolic wasn't having a good performance, unless Cinder and Kill at the time went off, it was very difficult for them to rebound. They were a good search and destroy team. They could beat you in an uplink at CTF here and there. However, when it came to their hard point, when it came down to their pure slang, it just was non-existent just because of the gun skill that lacks when it comes down to the core three. Of course, Cinder, Diabolic, and Chino. So with that in mind, is it a surprise for me to see Chino leave this team? It actually is, because I wasn't for sure if he was going to do it or not. I wasn't for sure if he was going to step out of his comfort zone and do it. And I'm very proud of him for doing this, because I think there are a number of different teams who are in thoughts of a roster change with a lot of different teams who are trying to, form. They have to evaluate themselves. If not evaluate, then reevaluate themselves, because there is a very, very talented guy who is now available. Now, I will say it to a number of different points. I think Chino works, but he works with a certain group of players. Chino has played on a number of different teams throughout his career, primarily on teams known as Noble, known as Justice. I mean, he played on Curse Youth for a while. I don't remember one of his earlier rosters than that, but he's been playing for a very, very long time. And it seems to me that he works with a certain group, and he likes staying with that group for a while. I mean, if you look at his career for a while, I mean, you look at his Black Ops 3, primarily DT, which later went over the Renegades. AW, All Rise Nation. Then it was, I think, Noble before that. Back in, what was that, Ghost. So, I mean, he's a very consistent player. He likes playing with the players that he feels comfortable with. And, of course, playing with previous teammates obviously helps. Him and Cinder and Miyagi and Slasher back in Noble back in the day. He kind of generates toward teammates that he's previously had. So I'm curious to see if he does find a roster soon, because of course that contract does come into play, and I think a major organization would be smart to evaluate and say, maybe we can build around this guy. We don't have a full team yet. Maybe we try to build around this particular player, and I hope that Chino does find a stable home quick, because what happens to a lot of players who have been on an organization for a long time with the same group of players is that it's hard for them to branch out. It's hard for them to branch out to teammates or to new teammates, because they haven't played with anyone in a long time. They don't know what it's like to play with other guys. And these other guys, and somebody's kind of erased them from their mind and said, oh yeah, that guy exists. Like, that's right, that Chino is actually available now. Like, he's actually a player who is out there. So it can be hard to find teammates, of course, if you have been teaming with the same group of guys for a very long time. But Chino, like I said, very talented Slayer, guy who could definitely drop numbers, but I think he definitely needs a leader role around him. He needs guys who he feels comfortable with, and once he has that, then I think he can definitely be a major, major element to some top placings. So with that in mind, Renegades now in some ways kind of has to look for one. And I'm going to say this, it would not surprise me whatsoever if Chino cannot find someone, or if Renegades can't find someone, that he would come back to this team. I'm not putting it out of the question at all. So kind of keep that in mind while he isn't officially on the Renegades team. I'm sure it's all still going to be. I don't think there's any bad blood between the team and him necessarily. I just think he's looking for something else. I think he realizes the talent that he has, and it wouldn't surprise me, or I think it would do good, to be honest, if the entire Renegades team decides to go their separate ways. That's just my opinion, though. Feel free to put your guys' thoughts down in the comments. Where could Chino go? Where does he find a home at? To be honest, my most recent thought in the back of my mind is that if he doesn't find a team, then he'll probably go back to the Renegades lineup, and maybe they try to reevaluate themselves. Maybe try to find a different player, because these guys are really, really good friends, and I think the grinding that they do, I definitely respect it. But they've got to get some type of other element into their particular lineup if they want to have high placings and succeed. So yeah, guys, that's going to do it for this particular roster shuffle video, part 2 or 2.0. If you guys would like to, make sure to subscribe to the channel for future content, as well as make sure to like this video if you guys did like it. A lot more content to come soon. I know it's been mostly roster changes and like updates from MLG Vegas, but kind of keep in mind, I have a number of different videos, a number of different kind of interesting topics that I'm going to be uploading throughout the next few days. Once again, Happy New Year's to you guys. Hope you enjoy your 2017. And that has been the Roster Shuffle 2.0 update. I'll see you guys all later. Have a fantastic day. And until next time, peace out.